Yes, would you ask Mr. Hoban to come back in, please? All right, Mr. Hoban?
Yes,
ready
thank
to
you.
carry on? Yes, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Hoban, I have just a couple of follow-up questions arising from this morning's evidence. The first is that you mentioned to us earlier that you, after about September 2013, you had some 120 to 130 projects to oversee. Can you give us a feel for how many of those were small, simple, domestic projects as opposed to larger buildings, more complex projects?
It's hard to answer that question because sometimes the simpler, what were considered to be the smaller projects would be difficult in that there could be issues regarding the workmanship, or sometimes you had difficulty getting into properties, or there was things wrong with the work. So although it could be small in nature, it could be difficult from other aspects, but maybe 50%, maybe more. I was dealing with a lot of basements at the time,
right?
And also I had a number of projects scattered around the borough on the partnership scheme. I had 18 projects, so it was quite time-consuming getting from one part of the borough to the other because I used public transport. So it would take up a lot of my day in travelling arrangements.
Yes, I see.
If I don't know whether that helps slightly.
Yes, I think that does help. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I also ask you about Lacknell House? And you told us this morning, and this is day 45, which is today, page 86, lines 8 to 16, that you remember Lacknell for the fire stopping.
Yeah.
What did you think, before the Grenfell Tower fire occurred, what did you think was the problem with fire stopping at Lacknell House?
That hadn't been provided, or it hadn't been done properly.
And when you say fire stopping, do you mean fire stopping in the technical sense, or do you mean cavity barriers?
Fire stopping, there may have been cavity barrier issues as well internally.
Right.
As I say, how much, it's a long time ago, so I can't recall how much detail. I know obviously there was recommendations put in by the inquiry
You mean the inquest?
At the inquest about certain regulatory matters.
Did you ever receive any training to learn the lessons of the Lacknell House fire at all?
I think it could have been mentioned in in-house seminars, but
Right.
specific training, no.
Right.
But in in-house training or seminars, it may have been mentioned in the actual presentation.
Yes. What about Shirley Towers? Does that fire mean anything to you?
Is that the one in Hertfordshire?
Yes.
Yes. I remember it being on the news because a couple of, three people lost their life. Two of them were firemen.
Yes. Yes. All right. But you don't remember any training in relation to the Shirley Towers fire?
No.
Can I then turn to the question of the involvement of Mr. Hanson and the means of escape group? Now, we know that within Rbkc there was something called a means of escape group that could be consulted by building control officers such as you. Is that right?
We did use their services, but we had originally the fire regulations group would have dealt with all aspects under B, but there was a change in policy. I can't remember when. It was prior to the restructuring where they management said that the surveyors were to deal with B2, 3, and 4 on buildings, whereas prior to that, Section 20 buildings, because this was what was known as a Section 20 building under the old London Building Act, would have been dealt with by the fire regulation group.
see. So, so there was a group called a means of escape group.
Well, I think they were actually called the fire regulations group,
Right.
although primarily it would be B1.
Does the division of responsibilities that you've just described to us, whereby surveyors were to deal with B2, B3 and B4, mean that you as a surveyor had not dealt with B2, B3 and B4 specifically on buildings prior to this restructuring?
No, we on smaller jobs, like a house or an low-rise block, yes, we would deal with those. On high-rise buildings, such as Grenfell, prior to that instruction, the fire regulations group would have dealt with all aspects.
Right. And you were not part of that group?
No, I stopped. I became a general assistant in 1985.
Yes. At the time of the Grenfell Tower project, Paul Hanson was part of the means of escape group, I think.
He was the only person.
He was the means of escape group, was he?
He was.
Right. And was a qualified fire engineer, isn't he?
Yes.
And you say in your first statement, there's no need to turn it up, it's paragraph 36, that Paul Hanson would make decisions on B1 and B5
Yes.
of the building regulations. And that was so in relation to Grenfell, was it?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that strictly he was a consultant who could make observations? That's how he's described his role in his statement at paragraph 31. Would you agree with that?
No. Well, he was the person that did all the arranged for the consultation with the fire authority. He would do all the paperwork with that. The process was when we got his observations, I would sit down with him and we go through his observations, and I would get his advice from time to time on other matters, because on Grenfell there was a number of emails relating to cavity barriers. I think it was in March 2015 where I sought his advice.
Yes.
on that.
We'll come to that.
And when I was dealing with the academy and the leisure centre, he was involved with considerations other than B1 in relation to no sprinklers being provided to the academy, and there was consideration over the hose reel lengths, I believe.
Can I just sort of see if I can cut through this a bit?
Yeah.
On Grenfell, who was ultimately responsible for B1 and B5? Was that Paul Hanson?
I would say yes, because he was the person that I would go to for. Sorry, I'm hesitating here. He's the expert, so I would not go against his advice.
Yes, but did you divide up responsibility? He would do B1 and B5, and you would do B3, 2, 3, and 4. Or were you responsible for all of those parts of the building regulations, with him giving specialist advice on B1 and B5?
Well, ultimately, I would say I'm the area surveyor, but he was the expert, and he would do the negotiations with the fire brigade, and if we had meetings, he was the person with the architect. He was the person that would would lead those meetings.
Would you generally defer to Paul Hanson on all fire-related building control issues if they arose in a building control application?
Yes,
Right.
if he pointed something out to me, yes, I would
So
take his advice, and obviously, when considering an application under B, you have to consider all aspects, in my view.
So would you say that you consulted with Paul Hanson on B2 to B4 matters, as well as B1 and B5?
I sought his advice from time to time.
Yes. And did Mr. Hanson refer matters on B3 and B4 back to you to decide?
Yes,
You
but
did.
but again, as I say, if I wanted clarification on B2, I was aware of the standards or not aware of. I understood the standards, but where there was. New codes came in, and he would be he'd be working with them all the time. He was on various committees,
Right.
so I would defer to him.
Yes. Now, Beryl Menzies, who's one of the inquiry's experts, considers that it was a failure on the part of Rbkc not to have used the resource of a qualified fire engineer for the benefit of the building control department as a whole. Do you agree?
Yes.
Do you also agree with her that the working relationship between the means of escape group, in other words, Mr. Hanson, and the other part of the building control department was undefined and unclear to those involved? Do you agree with that?
Well, as I say, I would refer to Paul from time to time. It would have been. It could have been a lot clearer.
Do you agree that the working relationship didn't necessarily support project surveyors like you in reaching the best decisions under or for the purposes of compliance with Part B of
Yes.
the building regulations?
Yes.
You do. Can I just show you a document before we turn to a different topic? RBK 3048682, please. Again, this is another internal Ryden document, so you won't have seen it, Mr. Hoban. It's an email of the 5th of September 2014. I'm so sorry. It's from you, actually. You will have seen it. It's from you to Simon Lawrence and Simon O'Connor at Ryden. And you say there in the second sentence, I would confirm that I'm the building control surveyor charged with dealing with all building regulations and matters for the project. Paul Hanson is the building control surveyor, fire regulations for the scheme, and he will provide me with technical advice and observations on the proposals submitted under parts B1 and B5 in Schedule 1 of such regulations, as that is his reference for this project. Should you have any proposals and or issues that you desire technical advice on from this office under parts B1 and B5 of the building regulations, I'd be grateful if you would contact myself in the first instance so that I'm aware of these matters, as they may impact on other parts of the building regulations. Do you agree with what you said there about the respective roles of you and Paul Hanson in relation to this project?
That's what we were instructed to do from, as I say, previously mentioned instruction prior to the restructuring
Right.
that we were to deal with B2, 3 and 4.
Right. The impression given by this email from you is that in relation to B2, 3 and 4 matters of the building regulations, you would be the person to give technical advice. And it was only Mr. Hanson who would be giving technical advice on B1 and B5. Is that what you wanted to impart?
Yes, but as I say, I would go back to Paul from time to time to get advice on matters.
So does it come to this, that Paul Hanson would be the go-to man for B1 and B5, you would be the go-to man for B2, B3 and B4, But he would be your private in-house resource for any particular technical
Yeah.
questions you had on B2, 3 and 4.
Yes, and he would come out with me on site
right.
from time to time.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I then turn to your specific involvement with Grenfell Tower?
Right.
Now, we know that Rbkc is the freehold owner of Grenfell Tower. Would Rbkc Building Control treat applications that it received in relation to buildings owned by Rbkc in exactly the same way that it would in relation to applications for buildings owned by other people?
Yes, as regards the regulations, we wouldn't give them any, as it were, favourable consideration. I know when I was dealing with the academy and the leisure centre, I spent a lot of time on there because I was instructed to do that.
Yes. There is some evidence of that. Now, we know that John Allen had been the primary point of contact with Studio E in 2012, and that will be explored with him perhaps. By the time you became involved, Rbkc Building Control had already met Studio E and had received some documents, such as the Exova Outline Fire Strategy. Can you confirm that?
Yes.
Yes. Now, Mr. Allen, John Allen, suggests in his first statement that he allocated the CALC, so KALC and stroke Grenfell project to you after he was appointed Building Control Manager in the September of 2013. Now, in your second statement to the inquiry, and just for reference purposes, this is paragraph 5 on page 2, you say you think you were appointed in December 2013.
Yeah.
Were you appointed in September or in December of that year, do you think?
I believe that John Allen had some dealings with Studio E in the September time. I believe, as I say, from my recollection, that he had some involvement, and then I was told in November or the December when I wrote that statement.
Okay. Well, let's
Or that
explore
email.
some more detail. Who was the building control surveyor in respect of the Grenfell Tower project during the period September to December 2013? Do you remember?
I would say John Allen was until it was handed to me.
Right. This may help you just to fix
But
it.
If
so
I
sorry.
may,
Yes,
sorry,
of course.
I don't know whether I actually attended a meeting with Bruce Soanes prior to that date.
Well, let's look at a document.
That's what I'm not certain of.
I understand. Thank you for that clarification. SEA 30 is 10232. I think we may be able to use this document to pin down a time. This is an email of the 31st of December 2013 from you, and you say in the first paragraph, "Thank you for your preliminary submission." It's addressed to Bruce Soanes. I have now been appointed the surveyor responsible for the part of the borough where your project is situated. And you say, "Please find attached marked up plans and observations relating to the fire strategy for the Grenfell Tower project for your information / records." So that gives a date of the 31st of December 2013. Do you think you had any involvement with Grenfell before that point?
Not that I'm. The only question mark is I had a meeting. Paul Hanson and myself had a meeting with Bruce Soanes at some stage, but I'm not certain of that date.
At this point.
Sorry,
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
but I believe that it would have been after that. But as I say, I can't say with absolute certainty.
No, I understand. When you did take over, as you say you had been, or as at the 31st of December, what steps did you take to familiarise yourself with the project?
I looked at the information that was given to me at that stage. I looked at the John Allen sent me some emails and a fire strategy. And then, as I say, until an application came, because I believe there was very little contact until and until I met with Bruce Soames, whenever that date may be.
Did you have a handover meeting with John Allen about Grenfell Tower?
No, just the email and as I say, that contents.
Right. Do you remember what the documents were, more specifically? You say emails and the fire strategy. We'll come to look at that in due course. But do you remember what emails were about?
It was mainly to do with smoke venting.
Right. At this stage, this is the pre-application phase, was there a project file on Accolade for you to look at?
No,
What about a hard copy file for you to look at?
I don't recall.
Right. Did you discuss the project with Paul Hanson at this stage, late December 2013?
I would have only discussed it with him when we met with Bruce.
Can we go to Rbkc 30444900, please? This is and this is all we have of that.
Right, yes.
This may, well, you say, right, that's helpful. This seems to trigger a recollection.
Right.
Just to explain what it is, it looks like an Outlook diary entry for the 30th of December 2013 to you and Paul Hanson, subject Grenfell Tower. Can you tell us what this is signifying?
No, when I was saying, right, I remember Neil Crawford at some stage mentioning when I was dealing with the academy, he spoke briefly to me during a site visit there.
Right.
I can only assume that there was a meeting, but the date is Christmas time, so I don't know whether we would have had anybody in the office for a meeting round that time, because that's the day before New Year's Eve.
Yeah, well, indeed, but we've seen that you sent an email on New Year's Eve, the next day, to Bruce Soames, saying that you had been appointed the BCO for the Grenfell Tower project. So you were in and working at that stage.
Oh yes, I would
My
most
question
probably be.
is, does this Outlook diary entry signify that there was a meeting between you and Paul Hanson on that day, 30th of December?
That I couldn't say. And was Paul was Paul working that week?
Do you remember, prior to your appointment at the end of December 2013, whether you had any discussions at all with either Paul Hanson or John Allen about the cladding and risk of external fire spread? No. Can I ask you to go to SEA 409805, please? This is an email from John Allen to Studio E of the 11th of November 2013. Now, it's not copied to you. And it explains that Rbkc's view, and this is about the fire, it's about the smoke extract system, as you can see from the third paragraph. But it explains that Rbkc's view was that the information submitted to date was not adequate to enable effective consultation with the fire authority. Were you aware of this email or discussions about that topic at this time?
I'm not certain. I can't give you an answer on that.
All right. Well, if we turn to the second page of this email run, this is an email from Bruce Soames to John Allen, dated the 25th of October 2013, which attached the proposed fire strategy for Grenfell. And that included the fire access and fire strategy drawings and the X-over issue number 2 of the outline fire safety strategy. As you can see from the list of documents that are said to be attached. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, that document, the OFSS issue 2, was dated the 24th of October 2013, so a little bit, well, the day before, I think, probably, by the time this email is sent. Do you remember reading the Ex-Over Outline Fire Safety Strategy, Issue 2, when you started working on the project?
I can't say what issue I looked at. I did look at a fire strategy.
Right. Issue 3 was dated the 7th of November 2013. Do you think you might have looked at that? There's not a great deal of difference between them.
I really can't
Right.
say. Sorry.
Were you told at the time why it was that either John Allen or Paul Hanson or both of them had reached the view that the information provided by Studio E, which included this outline fire safety strategy, about the smoke extract system was insufficient?
No.
Can we go to SEA 50154, please? This is a run of emails in early December 2013. The top one is dated the 3rd of December 2013, which attaches a fire strategy PDF. See that? Do you remember seeing or being aware of these emails at the time?
Not at the time, because as I said, I believe I took the project over at the end.
Right. Because you said earlier in your evidence that as part of the handover you were shown some emails. Was this?
Yeah, I don't.
Was this some email? Was this one of the emails you were shown? Do you think?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. Can we then go to SEA 301022 again? This is the 31st of December 2013 email we looked at 5 minutes ago or so, where you tell Bruce Soanes that you've been appointed the surveyor responsible for the area where Grenfell was situated. And you refer in the second paragraph down to marked up plans and observations relating to the fire strategy for the Grenfell Tower project for your information and records. You see that?
Yes.
And just for the transcript, the documents that you returned to Studio E are SEA 30103669, SEA 402629, and SEA 402630, just so we have those on the transcript. I just want to ask you about the markups and comments. Were they Paul Hanson's?
Yes.
Yes. Did you have any input into those markups and observations yourself?
We would have discussed them prior to. The usual practice, as I say, I don't know whether I had that. We would usually go into an office and we look at the plans because so that I was familiar with what was going on.
Yes. Did you discuss with Paul Hanson the marked up plans and observations with him specifically before sending this email to Mr. Soanes?
That would have been the practice, common practice.
Right.
I can't say that I did, but generally that's how I would do it.
And might that have been the day before?
Yeah.
According to the Outlook diary
Well,
entry?
maybe, yes, maybe that is. Sorry.
Do you remember that? I mean, it's possible,
I can't.
clearly,
Possibly we had a meeting,
All right.
and maybe that was it. That we agreed to sit down and go through, so that I was aware of what was going on.
Can we go to SEA 30103669? This is a memo from Paul Hanson to John Allen, dated the 6th of December 2013, B1 means of escape observations. And in it, he gives his comments about the smoke vent proposals. Do you think this was a document you were shown or saw before you took over?
I don't recall it ever.
Right. If we look at page 4 of that document, please, at the very bottom of that page, it says that Paul Hanson had not yet consulted the fire authority. Was it your understanding at this point that Paul Hanson was still not satisfied that building control had sufficient information from Studio E to enable him to consult the fire authority, or did you not know anything about this?
I don't know anything about this, but reading that, it would have, Paul has said that he hasn't enough information.
Yes. Just physically in the office at Rbkc, did you sit in the same office as John Allen or Paul Hanson, or did you overhear each other's work?
We had a hot desking system, so you would you could sit wherever you wanted. Generally, we would sit in the same area, but sometimes if you wanted, or if I wanted a quiet time in order to do some particular thing, I might go and sit in a corner.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. When you did come into the project, as you can see at the very end of December 2013, were you aware that the Grenfell Tower project involved overcladding the building?
Yes.
You were?
Yes.
Who told you that?
I could see that on the drawings.
Right, see it on the drawings. Now then, can we go to RBK 30048649, please? And look at the second email down on that page 1. This is an email from Bruce Soanes to you and Paul Hanson, 6th of January 2014. And in it he says, your comments are split roughly between the smoke vent and fire separation. The former will be covered by the engineers, the latter mostly by Studio E. The design has been the subject of lengthy deliberation, and while I can understand some of the requests for additional separation, there are reasons why we hadn't indicated them, and we would like to understand these with you in further detail. Access to the risers, refuse chutes, etc. The priority for our client, the TMO, is to eliminate the risk of significant design changes before appointing a contractor, and I believe the consultation with the fire authority is key to this. I hope this can be made before we arrange another meeting with you. Will a response to the smoke ventilation be enough for this to happen? Did you get the impression from this that Studio E was putting you under time pressure to consult the fire authority at this stage?
Yes, but we wouldn't, until we were happy with it, we wouldn't put an application in. But
right.
You can see that they're doing that.
Go to the top email then. This is Paul Hanson's suggestion to you internally, where he's recommending the following response. He'd been copied in on the email and was recommending a response to you. You see that?
Yes.
And it's sent to you at about 15:06 on that day. And just look at the text. He says, I recommend the following response. We are happy to pass on the question to the fire authority regarding changes to the smoke vent system as a separate exercise to the building control submission, etc. I'm not going to read it all out to you. Clearly, that's what he was suggesting you should say to Studio E. If we now go to RBK 403854, please, you can see your response to Bruce Soanes, sent at 15:20 the same day. So just about 15 minutes later. You see that?
Yes.
And that looks like a cut and paste from Mr. Hanson's suggestion in his email 15 minutes earlier. Is that right?
Yes.
I see. So you were simply passing on Paul Hanson's comments that he suggested to Studio E, effectively.
Yes.
I think in the event, Studio E didn't provide the further information relating to the smoke vent system that you'd asked for, did they?
That I can't comment on, sorry.
And I think that's right, that there was no consultation at that stage of the fire authority either.
No.
Okay. Now then, let's move on in time. Please go to ART 403931. These are minutes of progress meeting number 10 on site, 21st of April 2015. So a long way ahead in time. But if we look at page 3, you can see at the bottom of the page, it says there, Simon Lawrence meeting with building control on 17th of April, that must be 2015, to inspect the reinforcing to the mezzanine prior to the concrete pour. Do you remember, was it you who was the building control officer attending that meeting?
It most probably was, but I can't be absolutely certain.
Right. Can we go back then in time? RBK 30 is 52478. This is a record of the Rbkc site visits. Now, I just want to be clear with you what document this is, because it's a document that we will be going to quite a lot in the course of your evidence to come, Mr. Hoban. It's a document that was compiled on the 14th of June 2017, so the same day as the fire, and it's sent to Claire Williams of the KCTMO, and it's the records from building control, John Allen, of the site notes for the application. It's a long document, and it ends on page 1, so you will start at the bottom end of it. Can we go to page 8? This is the first entry or site visit taking place on the 29th of August 2014. Now, I should just tell you, this is the first Rbkc record of any site visit we have by building control to the Grenfell Tower refurbishment site. Is that right? Was that your first site visit, do you think?
I believe so. Well, from that, yes.
Okay. Now, if we go to RBK 403810, this is an email from you to Neil Crawford dated the 17th of July 2014. You see that?
Yes.
So this is after the fire.
No, this is before.
I'm so sorry. It's 2014, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Neil, please find detail below the last emails I have in my possession relating to the Grenfell Tower project for your information. And the email you sent him is the 8th of January 2014 from Paul Hanson to you, which is the one at 1506 that we saw, I think, earlier on. And that then became the one you cut and pasted and sent on.
Yeah.
This suggests, looking at it, that there'd been no further email contact between you and Studio E between the 8th of January, in the email we saw before, and mid-July 2014. Was that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you know what prompted you to send this email to Neil Crawford of the 17th of July 2014?
He asked for information.
He asked for information.
I think I believe he became involved. Up until that time, I'd been dealing with him on the academy extensively.
Do you remember how he contacted you?
Pardon?
Do you remember how he contacted you?
Well, there's obviously the email there. I don't know whether he said in conversation while I was at the dealing with the academy, whether he said to me that he wanted to talk to me about Grenfell, but I'd only be speculating.
Just so that I'm clear, you take over as building control officer on the Grenfell Tower project at the end of December 2013.
Yeah.
Were you still, after that time, building control officer on the Calc project?
Yes.
So you were running both of those?
Yes.
Right, I see. Do you remember in these initial discussions with Mr. Crawford about Grenfell Tower, what it was you discussed?
I think it was, I'll be dealing with it and I
Right.
need to see you.
I see. Did he give you any further information about the refurbishment at that time?
Not at that stage.
Did he mention overcladding the building, do you think?
No, I think it was just that he would be doing it.
Now, I think you then made this visit on the 29th of August 2014, which is referred to in the document we looked at a moment ago, was that before you'd seen any drawings for the building, other than perhaps the marked up version that was sent on the 31st of December
I believe so.
2013? Right. Can we look at a note of the site visit, Rbkc 52478, page 8, which we just looked at a moment ago? And you can see there it says, 29th of August 2014, action, pre-start visit, results satisfactory, Officer John Hoban. Notes, visited site, met project manager, had brief discussion about the project, asked to be contacted when construction works commence on site, gave advice as to what stages of the works we need to contacted to inspect. Workmen are still presently carrying out demolition works, nothing to check at time of visit. Demolition works to go on for some time. Also informed the project manager that I had yet to receive up-to-date details of the works. The reference to meeting the project manager, was that Simon O'Connor of Ryden?
I believe so.
Do you think you met Mr. Crawford, Neil Crawford of Studio E, on site at that meeting as well?
No, I don't believe I did.
It refers to a brief discussion about the project. Do you remember what the content of that discussion was?
Just generally what the works were to be.
Right. Did you look at any drawings at that meeting?
May have.
You may have.
Yes.
Do you have any? Do you have any specific recollection of it?
I can't remember that meeting, but I can remember having the discussion, but I can't specifically remember saying we got the drawings out. Generally, when I go on site, I would look at drawings.
Right. Would you look at drawings that you brought with you, or would you be provided with drawings when you got to site?
They would be the drawings on site. Sometimes I would bring drawings at the end in order to check that they corresponded with the fire strategy. But up until that time, I would look at the drawings on site, because obviously that's what I would be checking against.
I understand. So to get to the drawings on site, where would you go?
The site office.
And who was running that?
At that time, it was Simon Lawrence. Simon O'Connor.
Simon.
Simon.
So the up-to-date drawings that you would want to see would be held in the site office.
Yes.
I see.
I don't know how much information he would have had at that time.
At that meeting, do you remember whether you discussed the cladding proposals, the overcladding proposals, with Mr. O'Connor?
Not in specific detail, but I would have known that the building is being overclad.
Was there any discussion about the materials that were planned for use in the external wall construction?
No, I don't believe so.
Did they tell you that they had an outstanding planning application for approval of the materials on the facade, which had not yet been resolved?
No, I don't believe so.
Now, Mr. Crawford says in his witness statement, and this is paragraph 206, that he recalls meeting you on site in the week commencing the 25th of August 2014. Now, he was also asked about that in his oral evidence, and that's day 11, page 137 at line 12. And he said, and I'll just put to you the gist of his evidence, that he had with him the basic project drawings, and he says he recalls sitting and discussing the project, and that you took drawings away with you. Did you sit and discuss the project with Mr. Crawford in late August 2014?
I don't recall that.
Did you have any discussion with Mr. Crawford in late August 2014, which included the basic project drawings?
Not that I can recall.
Do you remember taking any drawings away with you from any meeting with Mr. Crawford in late August 2014?
No, I don't. As I say, as far as I recall, I didn't.
Were you ever given drawings in any face-to-face meetings that you had with Mr. Crawford?
Not that I can recall.
What about another member of the Grenfell design team?
I don't know whether Bruce left any drawings with us when he had the meeting in our office.
which meeting you referring to?
Paul and I had a meeting with Bruce Soames at some stage. I mentioned this previously.
Yes. Was this prior to this site visit or afterwards?
I can't recall. Generally, I wouldn't take information away with me because I'd be out on site all day, and I wouldn't be carrying drawings with me because, as I say, I'd be going in and out of sites.
Do you remember telling Mr. Crawford at this time that you were primarily concerned with fire-related matters and that those were your priority?
No, I'd be concerned with all aspects of the building regulations.
Now, your site visit note here says that you informed the project manager that you had yet to receive up-to-date details of the works.
Yes.
Was that a matter of concern to you at the time?
It was, but it wasn't unusual that we didn't have. We were on lots and lots of jobs. It would be chasing people for drawings and information.
Right.
So it wasn't unusual.
Was there any particular aspect of the project that you had in mind when you asked for up-to-date information on that occasion?
No, it was generally details of the work.
Did you see a mock-up of the cladding on site during your visit?
No.
So we know that there was a mock-up presented in July 2014, but we're not sure when it was taken down. Do you see anything on site?
I don't recall
showing...
seeing anything on site.
Right. We know that the full plans application had been submitted already on the 4th of August, so much earlier in that month. Were you concerned that there were no up-to-date details, given that the full plans application was already live?
We got in applications from time to time with no drawings. It was validated that that's the way the office worked. So it was a concern, but it wasn't unusual.
Yes, I see. But was the absence of plans, given that there was at this stage a live full plans application, something which drove you to ask for more details?
Oh yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
The note also refers to the stages of works that you'd need to be contacted for inspection. Do you see it says advice as to what stages of the works we needed to be contacted to inspect? What were those stages? Do you remember?
It was mainly the structure, DPCs, drainage, the notifiable notifications as specified in the building regulations.
And for a project involving cladding, over-cladding, and I know you say you've not done a high-rise before, did you have any sense of what stages you would expect to carry out inspections at from that point on?
I would go along and do interim visits and see what was going on at the time, and then if anything concerned me, then I would react accordingly.
So you'd say you do interim visits. Now, you told us this morning that these were you set these at monthly for yourself.
Yeah.
So was that just a diary entry, or were your site visits related to particular stages the project?
No.
reached?
Well, I think at the start with Simon O'Connor, after I finished one visit, I would agree a date for another, but that didn't continue.
Right. More specifically, would you expect to inspect particular elements like insulation and cavity barriers where they'd been installed but hadn't yet been covered up by cladding panels?
I did. I did go and see as works was progressing on certain occasions.
Yes, we'll come to those. Let me put the question slightly differently because I'm not sure I've really got the point across. When you were saying, as this note says, give advice as to what stages of the works we needed to contact to inspect, or to be contacted to inspect, did you have in mind that even though you might be doing site visits monthly, you needed to inspect each element of the cladding system as it was installed to make sure that it was installed correctly and compliantly before it was covered up by the next element?
No, not
You didn't.
No.
Now we move forward a little bit in time, not much. SEA 50189, 3rd of September 2014. We see here an email to you from Simon Lawrence on that day, copied to Simon O'Connor and Neil Crawford. And he says, "Morning, John. We haven't been introduced properly yet, but I'm Ryden's contracts manager for the Grenfell Tower project. I understand you dropped into our site office recently and had a brief introduction to the project and drawings from our project manager, Simon O'Connor." You see that?
Yes.
Now, first of all, you hadn't had any contact, I think, with Simon Lawrence before that point, had you?
No, I don't believe so.
And looking at the second sentence of this email, is this your visit on the 29th of August, do you think?
Yes, I believe so.
And he says that you'd had an introduction to the product and drawings. It looks very much from this, a contemporaneous document, that Simon O'Connor did show you some drawings.
Yes, it would appear so.
But I think you can't remember what drawings he showed you,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah.
And then if we look at the last sentence, he says that he is going to arrange a meeting with yourself on site shortly with Studio E. Does that help you remember whether you had already met Neil Crawford on site in the week of the 25th of August, as he says, or not met him yet?
I don't believe I had, as I say, but I meet so many people, and I was meeting Neil on the academy.
Yes.
So it's I can just say that, but I don't believe I had, or it's my belief that I didn't have a meeting with
Yes,
him
I follow.
before then.
Right. Is it possible that you met Neil Crawford on the Calc site in the week of in the last week of August 2014, and met Simon O'Connor on the Grenfell site in the same week?
Maybe I can't.
You can't
say.
remember. Can we just go up a little bit in this email to the long first paragraph? And halfway through that, Simon Lawrence says, "To be honest, we would have liked to have got yourself on board earlier, but there has been some client design changes which we're hoping to confirm before our application so as not to confuse issues in the future." Would you expect to have had more involvement with a project of this nature before a full plans application was formally submitted?
Yes.
And would you expect a contractor or an architect to ask for your input on, particularly the overcladding proposals, as part of the pre-application advice or input from you?
Yes.
Yes. Did you think at this time that the full plans application was coming rather late in the day?
Yes.
Yes. Did you get the sense that it would have been better to involve you at a much earlier stage so that you had input from a building control perspective into the full plans application before it was submitted?
Yes.
Yes. Now, were you aware at this point, so early September 2014, that Rbkc's planning department was considering Ryden's proposal to install ACM polyethylene core panels as the rain screen instead of zinc panels with a metal honeycomb core?
I wouldn't have been aware of that.
Can you help me? At that time, would you expect the planning department to flag matters like that to the building control department as part of its integrated cooperative approach?
As I said previously, we would have contact with the planners when they asked for advice on certain matters. It wasn't. I'm not aware of any policy. There may have been a policy, but I wasn't actually aware of it. As I say, with planners, they would come to me occasionally with plans. For example, if they were altering a listed building and they were concerned about a particular type of construction, but generally the planners didn't consult us on a regular basis.
No. Would you expect the planning department to come to you and ask for your view as a building control officer, where something like the panels on the exterior of an overcladding system were to be changed from zinc to aluminium?
It would have been good if they had.
Well, it would have been good if they had.
Yes.
Did you expect them to do so at the time, as a matter of fact?
They as I say, my contact with planning officers was they would come to us when they felt it was necessary.
Right. Was there any communication, to your knowledge, between the planning department and the building control department within Rbkc about Grenfell Tower at around this time?
No, not to my knowledge.
Can we then inch forward in time to RBK 3052478, please? This is another record on page 6 of this document. This is another record of a visit, 5th of September 2014. And it copies into the document an email from you, Mr. Hoban, to Simon Lawrence and Simon O'Connor of the 5th of September. And it's labelled an interim site visit. Did an actual site visit take place on that date, do you think?
I would have to see my diaries. That's why I was asking for my Outlook calendar to confirm that.
Right.
I believe it would have happened that day, but without access to my Outlook calendar or the other, I can't confirm that.
You can't confirm. I mean, clearly somebody who compiled this thought that your action was an interim visit by reference to this
That would have
email.
been me.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you just said?
I said that would have been me.
Right.
I believe I would have put that. I think I was still waiting for it. Well, you can see it's unsatisfactory. I'm still waiting for information, I believe.
I follow. If we can go to page 7 of that document, we can see that you're sending, as part of that entry, or the email, or you're recording the email from Neil Crawford to Simon Lawrence, copied to Paul Hanson. You see that?
Yeah.
Which says that Paul Hanson is fire engineer and best placed to answer questions regarding the dry riser and AOVs. And then your email above that we saw earlier on. Looking at those two together, are you saying there that all queries should come to you first?
Yes, so that I'm aware of what's going on the project.
Yes, exactly. The question is, did Ryden and Studio E comply with your request after you made it clear to them?
I think that sometimes there was direct contact with Paul.
I see. Now, moving on in time to later in September, can we go please to RYD 30187442? This is an email from Neil Crawford to you of the 24th of September 2014. And it attaches a zip file containing a pack of drawings. It's also copied to Paul Hanson and Simon Lawrence, as we can see. Now, this is about 7 weeks after the full plans application had been submitted on the 4th of August. Was this the first time that you had received drawings relating to the project, other than those that had been marked up by Mr. Hanson at the end of December 2013?
Yes.
And in the second sentence of the email, he says, I believe yourself and Paul Hanson sat down earlier in the year and did an initial appraisal of the proposed layout changes to the lower levels with Bruce Soanes from our office. Is that correct? Had you done that?
That's the meeting I was referring to earlier.
And do you remember when earlier in the year, you'd done that initial appraisal?
I can't recall. As I say, there may be records in Paul Hanson's files on that.
Do you remember whether that appraisal covered the design, construction or make-up of the overcladding system proposed?
That I couldn't tell you.
Looking at this pack of drawings that comes in, did you review this pack when it came in?
Yes.
You did. Did you take notes about the drawings or on the drawings?
Yes.
You did. Can you recall in general terms what your impression was about the quality or the completeness of the drawings that were submitted?
They weren't complete.
Weren't complete. Now, these drawings were issued to you clearly outside the statutory 5-week time limit for a decision on the full plans application. Did that concern you?
It did concern me that I wasn't getting information from them. In my view, the original application wasn't a valid application because it wasn't complete. But our office would accept just a form as a valid submission.
Was there any policy within the Building Control Department concerning compliance by surveyors with the 5-week time limit?
I don't know whether there was anything written down. Generally, we would work to those timetables, but as I say, with this particular project, the drawings weren't there, and as I say, we were waiting for information, and I was trying to work with the contractor and the architects.
Was there any policy within the Building Control Department for enforcing compliance by applicants with the time limit? So, for example, rejecting applications that were out of time?
Yes.
Well, what was that policy for enforcement?
I don't know whether it was written down, but sometimes if I had an application and there was no drawings, I would actually write down that rejection. Please submit details A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.
Do you know why you didn't reject the full plans application?
At this stage,
it was out of time.
Because I was trying to work with the contractor and Studio E.
Right. Now, Ms. Menzies says at paragraph 326 of her report, just for the reference, it's BMER 704 at page 101, that you should have rejected the full plans application due to a lack of supporting documentation to enable the application to be decided within the statutory time limit. Do you agree with that?
In hindsight, yes, but as I say, at the time I was trying to work with them.
Yes, I understand. Okay, now, before we look at the details of these drawings, I just want you to look at the last sentence of Neil Crawford's email. He says, I know you like to go through the drawings on an agreed process of release rather than just being swamped with everything at once, so I'm just sending the following drawings to start with. Now, if we go to his statement, I do want to show you this. This is SEA 30144275, please, at page 17. I'd like to show you paragraph 40 on that page. And he says that this is the middle of the paragraph. Building Control set its own agenda for checking off items, and it made it clear to me that I would be contacted should further information be required. So that's what he said in his witness statement. On day 11 at page 142, he told us that reference was a reference to his conversation with you on site in the week of the 25th of August 2014. Do you remember saying something along those lines to Mr. Crawford at that time?
I don't.
You don't? Is it right that you told Neil Crawford that you didn't want to be swamped with everything at once?
We would have it generally in stages. That's how it would work. But I don't actually recall actually saying those words. When I was dealing with the academy, as I said, things came in stages.
Yes. Did you tell him that your workload was particularly heavy at this point, and therefore you only wanted?
I don't believe I did.
Right. Do you agree that only asking or only getting things in pieces, tranches, runs the risk that relevant information might be missed or might not be given to you because the relevant professionals are waiting for you to ask for it? In other words, when you were ready, you would take on more.
No, as I say, it's their responsibility to provide us with information, and I was chasing them for information. Or perhaps chasing isn't the word. I did mention it on numerous occasions. As I say, it's sort of highlighted with the calculations. They didn't come in until whatever date, so I was always after them for information, and I think it was, yes, it's coming.
Let's now look at the drawings contained in the zip file that Mr. Crawford attached and sent to you on the 24th of September 2014. Can we please bring back document RYD 3018742? Now, I just want to start with a general proposition. The inquiry's experts, by whom I mean Ms. Menzies, Dr. Lane and Mr. Hyatt, each of those experts to the inquiry, have looked at this zip file and come to the conclusion that the drawings listed in the covering email don't match the drawings in the zip file. Did you yourself do any checks of the drawings that you had in the zip file against the list to see if there were discrepancies?
No, I don't believe I would have. I would have asked for somebody to process these drawings so that I would have a number of sets. So as I say, I don't know whether I actually emailed Paul Hanson this or whether I actually got them printed and filled in a consultation form, because there's a formal consultation form that I have to fill in and send to the Fire Regulations Group when consulting with them.
Right. Did you note that the drawings named in the list were missing from the zip file? Some of them were.
No, I don't believe I did.
I mean, for example, did you note that Fire Access Plan 1279 SEA brackets 08 brackets 100B, which is listed as the second?
I can't recall.
Was missing. You didn't.
Sorry.
Let me just go to an example of what those drawings did show. Can we go to RYD 3018750? Now, before you do, this is drawing 1279-05-100 Rev 00, south elevation, and that's the 6th drawing down under basic plans. Can we just go to that? It's RYD 3018750. So the email says it's included. And this is that drawing. Did you generally check the revision numbers for drawings to see if they match the covering email?
Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't.
Okay. Looking at this drawing, can we just zoom in on the top left-hand side? This is the south elevation. We're going to have to do our best, I think, with this, unless we can make it a little bit clearer. But I want to show you item 5 in the top right-hand corner. I can read it to you. Item 5 says, perhaps we can't zoom in any further, but it says zinc spandrel panel for cladding to residential floors, Item 7 says zinc crown elements, and item 9 says zinc column cladding. Do you remember seeing a drawing like this at that time telling you that zinc cladding panels were proposed?
Yes.
You do.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't say what kind of panel, whether it's a zinc panel with a metal core or zinc with a composite core, which did exist. Did you think to yourself at the time, well, what kind of panel is this?
Yes. Yes.
You did think it, did you?
I believe so.
Did you ask anyone at the time, what kind of panel is this?
I can't recall.
Right. Were you aware that there were available in the market two kinds of zinc panels, at least two kinds, one with a honeycomb core, in other words, a metal inert core, and one with a composite core?
No.
You didn't. There's also no mention here of any type of insulation that would be installed behind the panel. Did you spot that?
Yes.
Did you take that up with anybody?
I did. I was waiting for details.
Did you say to anyone at the time, well, this drawing is incomplete because it doesn't tell me what the insulation is?
And as I say, I was waiting for further details.
Because that wasn't quite my question. Did you actually say to anyone, what's the insulation? I don't see it on the drawing.
I can't recall.
Right. How would you be able to assess if the cladding was likely to comply with B4 of the building regulations if you didn't know the type of zinc rain screen panel or the insulation being proposed?
I think the contractor told me what they were using at some stage, and obviously on site I could see that they were using Celotex when it arrived on site, whatever date that was.
Well, that's looking forward in time, and we'll come to that. But at this stage, given these drawings, you can see what you can see, and you can see what you can't see.
Yes.
My question is, did you take up at that stage with either the architect or Ryden the fact that you did not see what kind of, for example, insulation was being proposed?
I asked for more details
On the insulation specifically?
on the job.
Right.
The job.
Let's move on. SEA 50231, please. This is a few days later, 29th of September 2013. This is an email from Neil Crawford to you, in which, if we go to page 3 of that document, we can see that there is an email to you. John, please see attached the current Exover study, which was written prior to the fire strategy Rev B changes, and also attach the correspondence with Exover relating to the Rev B changes, which we will modify accordingly. When that came to you, did you read the Exover Outline Fire Safety Strategy version 3?
I would assume so. I can't. As I say, I can't. It doesn't stand out.
Right. Do you think you made a record of your thoughts or comments about it anywhere?
I may have highlighted something on it. I would have sent this on to Paul as well
Right.
at that time.
Well, let's just look at the document he sent you. And we can't see from the face of the email what it is he's sending you, but from another document we can, and it is CST 50702, please. This is the Grenfell Tower Outline Fire Safety Strategy, issue number 3, 7th of November 2013. Just looking at its first page, does it trigger a recollection that this is a document you've seen before?
As I say, I can't remember, unfortunately.
Can't remember.
No.
Right. Well, let's look at page 9 and see if this triggers a recollection. I'd like you to look, please, at paragraph 3.1.4 under compliance with B4, external fire spread. Now, this was your domain.
Yes.
It is considered, say Exover, that the proposed changes will have no adverse effect on the building in relation to external fire spread, but this will be confirmed by an analysis in a future issue of the report. When you received this document on the 29th of September 2014, did you notice that? Did you notice that paragraph?
I was aware of that statement, but whether it was at that particular time, because I'd seen it in the initial fire strategy,
The initial fire strategy.
Using my hands there.
Well, let me see if I can help. You had received issue 2, which had been dated the 24th of October 2013, or rather, it had been received by Building Control. Do you think you'd seen that?
I had seen that.
Right.
As I say, that this one, I feel I would have read it, but I can't say that I read it on a particular day.
Did you come to any conclusion about whether this document, so far as you can recall it at all, was sufficient for the purposes of the full plans application?
No, it would be. Could you repeat the question, please?
When Mr. Crawford sent you this document, and I know you say you can't remember reading it, but did you have any thoughts at the time about whether it was sufficient for the purposes of the full plans application?
It was part of it.
Right. Now, we know that no future analysis on B4 was ever carried out after November 2013. Did you note the fact that it had been promised?
I may have. What I would say is when I was issuing the certificate at the end, I may not have gone back to the file and done things as I should have done.
I think it would follow from that answer that you never, as a matter of fact, went back to Ryden or Studio E and asked for this report to be updated with a future analysis.
No, I don't think I did.
Do you know why that is?
As I say, at the end, there was a lot of outside influences going on, and I was having difficulty in dealing with things generally due to family matters that were going on at that time. And
Mr. Chairman, I'm in the middle of a line of questions, but I think it's probably
I think we should
the
have a
right
break.
time for a break.
Yes. We'll have a bit of a break now, Mr.
all right.
We'll come back at 20 to 4, please.
Right.
And again, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while you're away. Thank you. Twenty to 4 then, please. Yes, would you ask Mr. Hoban to come in, please? Right, Mr. Hoban, ready to carry on?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Yep. Right, just take your time. Would you like to go out for a moment and just... Should we have a couple of minutes out?
No, I'll be okay.
You sure?
Yes.
There's no rush.
No. In relation to my last answer about not asking for the fire strategy, I don't know whether it be appropriate for me to tell you what was going on in my personal life at that particular time.
Well, can I suggest we just pass over that for the moment?
All right. Thank you.
I think we all understand that you were going through a very difficult time,
Yes.
and we don't want to pry into your private life at all.
All right. Thank you.
So just take a moment to
All right. Thank
compose yourself.
Right.
All right?
Sorry. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Yes, Mr.
Right. Sorry.
Mr. Hoban, it's quite all right. Just coming back to where we were before the break, just focusing on the question of the cladding package. Is it right that no comprehensive cladding package was ever provided to you?
Not full comprehensive cladding pack.
And I think it's right that you didn't request one either.
I did ask for information.
Yes.
I did, as I say, I repeatedly asked for information. I found out certain information myself through talking with the contractor and actually seeing what was done on site.
Yes. Can we look at a document, Rbkc 3048693, please? Now, just to put it in its precise time context, this is an email from you, Mr. Hoban, of the 29th of September 2014 to Mr. Hanson, and you forward to him on that day the email that you'd had from Neil Crawford on the 24th of September. You can see that. And you ask him, you say, please may I have your observations under Part B of the building regulations for the attached proposals for the Grenfell Tower redevelopment. Now, this is, looking at the timing, quite curious, because you can see that you get the Exova OFSS that we saw before on the 29th of September, as we saw before. And this is an email you're sending to Mr. Hanson 10 minutes before you got that. So it looks on the emails that you were asking him for his observations only a few minutes before you actually then received the outline fire safety strategy. My question is, did you intend Mr. Hanson to comment on B3 and B4, or the whole of B?
Well, the whole... Well, it was B1 and B5, but when you're considering B1 and B5, you also look at other aspects.
Right. Now, as I say, just to be clear, we saw earlier that you'd received, on the same day, the 29th of September, the email from Neil Crawford at 16:37. That was SEA 50231, where he sent you the Exova OFSS, the Outline Fire Safety Strategy version 3. Here we see you 10 minutes before that, at 16:27, asking Mr. Hanson for a view. Did you send the outline fire safety strategy that you then got 10 minutes later to Mr. Hanson?
That I don't know.
Right. It looks as if you could have done, but we don't see any record of you doing so. Can you help us with why you didn't do so on the face of it?
I'm fairly certain that I would have sent it, because in order for him to consider it, it would have, been part of that.
How would you have sent it to him if not by email? Would you have printed it off and put it on his desk?
I may have.
Right.
Generally, what happened, as I say, that there's a special form to be filled in as well.
Right.
That we had. It was a standard form that we would have to fill in, which I would generally handwrite, and that was part of the process we had, together with drawings.
Now, we can see you sending this request on the 29th of September.
Yeah.
It appears that Paul Hanson didn't reply to this request for comments until the 10th of November 2014. And I'll show you a document in a moment to show you that. But does that correspond with your recollection,
Yes.
that long gap?
Yeah, from what I've read through the information that I've received.
Right. RBK, let's have up RBK 3033895, please. This is his response on the 10th of November 2014. And I think we need to go to page 2. And this is over a month after you'd asked him to give comments. Do you know the reason for the delay?
That would have been, I can only surmise it was his workload at the time.
Right. And it deals with B1 means of escape observations. There's nothing in here about B3, and critically nothing about B4, external fire spread, and about the cladding. Do you know why that is?
That's a standard form that he uses. And as I say, I was responsible for B2 and B3, B4. But as I mentioned to you, when considering B1, you have to look at other aspects of the scheme as well, as a whole.
Yes, but you told us earlier that you hadn't limited, as indeed we see from the email,
Yeah.
you hadn't limited Paul Hanson to comments on B1. You'd said Part B, you made it very clear. But here you were only getting comments on B1. And given that he was your go-to man for fire issues on B4, why did you not go back to him and say, well, Paul, this is fine for B1, but can I please have your comments on B4? Why didn't you do that?
I can't.
You don't know.
Answer that question.
Let's look at page 3 of that document. About halfway down page 3, he says under the heading, new non-residential access to residential stairway. And he makes a comment about the boxing club connected to a single stairway. And then a comment about the fire consultants providing a 0.4 square metre natural ventilated lobby connections. And he then says, therefore, Rbkc are not in a position to approve the proposals at this stage due to the need for the design team to establish an acceptable extract rate for the powered lobby ventilation system and the provision of ventilated lobby protection to all stairway connections to residential and other uses. Now, can we take it from that statement that Paul Hanson's view, limited though it was to B1, was that the full plans application could not be approved at that stage?
Yes, or he couldn't send it to the LFEPA
Right.
for consultation.
And if it couldn't be approved at that stage, or even be submitted to the LFEPA for consultation, it couldn't be approved at all.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Now, you also went to site on the 29th of September 2014, and we can see that from your note, RBK 3052478. Again, please, page 6 this time. And halfway down that page, we can see this date entry, and the action is described as a pre-start visit. And you say, visited site, met project manager, had brief discussion about the project, workmen still presently carrying out demolition works, nothing to check at time of visit, demolition works to go on for at least another month, also informed the project manager that I had just received up-to-date details of the works. But was the reference to receiving up-to-date details of the works a reference to Neil Crawford's email of the 24th of September 2014, in which he sent you that zip file full of drawings?
Yeah.
It was. Do you remember whether you looked at those drawings before going to site?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. What did this second, quotes, brief conversation about the project, unquotes, involve? Do you remember?
I can't recall it
Right.
now. It could, as I say,
Now, we then go on in time to the full plans decision, which is a different topic. You say in your second statement, and just for reference purposes to save time, this is paragraph 11 on page 4 of your second statement. You say that the Rbkc document P6 sets out the formal process used by the Building Control Department for the full plans application. That's right, is it?
yes.
Yeah.
That's,
Now, if you go to the P6, this is RBK 3052486, please. 3052486. This is it looks as if this is a P6.
yes.
This one is dated the 10th of August, issue 3, prepared by John Allen. Is this a standard form?
It's a form that the P6 is a document that was produced by John Allen.
I see. And if we look at the fourth box down, in the last sentence, it says, for FPA, full plans application, meaningful response made to applicant within 10 days from receipt of application and noted on accolade. You see that? Do you agree that that did not happen with the Grenfell Tower full plans application?
Correct.
Why is that? Why didn't it happen?
I was waiting for observations from Paul.
Right. From Paul Hanson,
Yeah.
which you then didn't get until
Yeah.
mid-November, or the 10th of November.
Yeah.
And that was only on B1.
Yeah.
And even then it wasn't enough to pass the application.
As I say, meaningful response was could mean a meeting, request for details. That's how general it was in our office.
Right. Well, you say that's how generally it was in our office. I wonder if that is quite right. Can we look at what John Allen says? Can we go to his first statement, which is RBK 3033930, and I'd like to go to page 3, please. And on page 3, we go to paragraph 15, and he says, as a surveyor, the typical process of checking a building regulation application would be to sort out the drawings you need to look at each drawing, make a list as you go along, thinking through the building regulations, and then usually write a letter suggesting amendments with a commentary which includes reference to the building regulations. For example, one might tell the applicant that they have not provided structural calculations. Do you agree with that summary?
No, that wasn't the case in our office.
At all?
I believe that's my view.
So let's just go through this in bits if we can. Would you say that it wasn't a typical process within the Rbkc department that you would sort out the drawings you needed to look at?
Well, you would do that, but it wasn't. Yes, you would do that, but that there was requesting information as well, or having a meeting would be classed to discuss proposals. That would be classed as a meaningful response.
I see. So I think I'm getting the sense from your answers that was an iterative process a little bit.
Sorry.
You'd do it as you wouldn't do it in one go. You might do it in stages.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Mr. Hoban, would it be fair to understand that Mr. Allen here is assuming that you've got a full plans application in front of you with all the plans.
Yeah, yeah,
And then he's describing how typically you'd go about
yes,
processing it.
yes, yes.
Well, if you did have all the plans, would you do it in this way, or would
Yes.
it typically be done in this way?
Yes, yes. As I say, that wasn't always the case.
Oh, well, I
No,
understand.
no, that's right.
So just following up on that, when he says the typical process is a process typical when applied to the full plans application, how typical was it that you would have a full plans application to which this process could be applied?
In most cases, it would. It depend on the size of the project, obviously.
Yes. In most cases, it would, I think, is
Yeah.
your answer.
Yes. Yes.
So does that tell us that Grenfell Tower was an exception to the norm?
No. As I say, there were cases where you got little information.
Was it your experience that you wouldn't have a fully compliant or a full plans application capable of being submitted to this typical process that's described, where it was a design and build contract? In your experience?
Well, the only one I can relate to is the Academy and the Leisure Centre, and I took those over at when they were coming out of the ground, and I did a schedule for both when they were coming out of the ground. Schedules hadn't been done prior to them starting.
Right. Don't think I've quite got a feeling for where that answer takes me.
Yeah,
but
as I say, so the full plans applications for those went in, and there weren't schedules. I was asked to, or not asked, I was instructed to deal with them, and then had a meeting, and the process started.
So that was a design and build contract, as we know.
Yes.
So your experience of design and build contracts, it seems certainly on calc.
Is very, very limited to those particular projects.
I see. All right. Do you agree that a Part B review of a full plans application for Grenfell should have comprised a detailed scrutiny of the fire safety proposals set out in the plans and documents provided by the applicant,
Yes.
and an assessment by you, as the building control officer, as to whether there was adequate detail to allow an assessment to be made,
Yeah.
and a review of a record of the review, noting any variations from recognised guidance?
Well, yes. As I say, they had certain information on the plans, but as I say, as we know, they changed.
And should it have comprised also an assessment of whether the proposal was generally compliant as regards B1 and B5, so as to allow the fire authority to have a proper consultation?
Yeah. As far as I can recall, there was two consultations with the brigade.
Yes, my question is a more general one. Should the full plans application have given you enough information to allow consultation with the fire authority in relation to compliance with B1 and B5?
Yes.
Yes. And should it have comprised enough information so as to allow the issue of a decision notice as a record of the approved or rejected works? Yes. Thank you. When you carried out your review, did you use a checklist?
Yes, as I mentioned that document I mentioned check.
The plans checker.
Yeah.
I see. Did you record your review anywhere, whether on that plan or in your notebooks or?
As I say, it would have been on the sheet,
Right.
and then there'd be a list of information.
Now, we've seen the memorandum prepared by Paul Hanson in response to your question, limited though it was to B1. Did you prepare a similar memorandum in respect of B2, 3 and 4?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
in a formal way, in the way we've seen it with him?
No, it would be well, cutting pasting clauses.
Right. But did you prepare a formal standalone paper report?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Do you remember when you did that?
When that application came in the September-November time?
Well, it came in on the 4th of August.
Oh, sorry, did it?
2014, yes.
No.
Now, in your second statement, if we can have paragraph 12 at page 4, please, you say that and this is paragraph 12, which is the question is, following receipt of the application form for the refurbishment works to Grenfell Tower from Studio E dated 5th of August 2014, that would be 4th of August, was a decision notice ever issued? If not, why not? And your answer is, I don't know if a decision notice was ever issued. If it was not, then I do not know why not. I completed the standard form P60 and a schedule of conditions and informatives in order for the decision notice to be processed by the Building Control Business Support team. Now, we know that this was around the 18th of November 2014 because I think you emailed Studio E to say a decision notice would be forwarded shortly. And we have that at SEA 3014276 at page 25. There's no need to bring it up. Can we take it that you had concluded, based on the information provided to you with the full plans application, that the project was likely to comply with the building regulations?
No, well, it'd be conditions. It would be, I don't know, for example, the fire time on the building was 2 hours. Lining shall be in accordance with such and such of the building regulations. Cavity barriers shall be provided in accordance with section 9, is it? It'd be conditions.
And do you remember where you put those conditions? Was that into the standard form P60?
It would be attached to that.
Yes, I see. Now, we've just looked at Paul Hanson's view on the B1 proposals, and that was that Rbkc couldn't approve them for the reasons he sets out. Can you explain how it was that you were able to pass the full plans application, although with conditions attached?
Would be subject to conditions.
I see. Now, we've seen some of the information provided with respect to the facade, and we noted zinc for elements of the exterior, and also the absence of any mention, even, of insulation on the south elevation drawing I showed you. Given that drawing that you had on the 24th of September 2014 didn't contain sufficient detail about the type of cladding panel or insulation to be used, how could you conclude that the full plans application should pass, albeit with conditions?
We would do that as a general standard. For example, if structural details hadn't been submitted, we would make that a condition.
Right. Do you remember whether you did make a condition of the provision of details of the insulation? A condition?
I can't recall. I would have said that the insulation would be in accordance with. Have you got? Could you call up the building regulations for me, please? Right. Is that possible?
Yes. It's CLG. Well, which part do you want to see?
Maybe section 12.
Section 12. I think that's CLG 50224 from memory, and it's 95 from memory. But I think I showed you CLG 173. Well, there it is.
Yeah,
that's one of them.
Yeah, insulation and cladding systems shall be in the court. I can't actually remember the words, but it would, as I say, as a general.
Right.
The external, the cladding system should be in compliance with section 12. Please provide further information. I can't actually, as I say, recall what was
No. I mean, cutting to the point, do you agree that you should either have requested further details of the facade works, including the specifications for the insulation itself, or else rejected the full plans application because the applicant had not demonstrated that the works complied with B4?
That's how it was done at that time. I understand what you're saying, but...
Do you agree with me?
In hindsight, yes, but as I say, we would issue conditional approval with conditions.
Well, let's just go back to Mr.
Can I
Crawford.
just interrupt you for a moment, Mr. Litt?
Yes.
I understand what you're saying about a conditional approval and so on. What steps would you take to make sure that the condition was properly satisfied?
By site inspection and further information coming in.
Would you expect the designer to submit drawings or a specification identifying for the sake of argument, the insulation?
Yes, I did ask for that, but as I say, I found out what they were using on site.
But ideally, you'd want to know what it was before they started using it.
Well, ideally, yes.
And I'm wondering whether you required a specification of the relevant material.
I don't recall receiving a specification.
So the condition wasn't really a condition of satisfying you that the material was appropriate. It was a condition of using the appropriate material.
Yeah, yes.
With the risks, of course, that they might not.
Well, as I say, I was looking at what was on site, and then I checked against the BBA certificate.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to follow that up a little bit more,
Yes, of course.
if I can, with questions I've already got on this point. Can we go to Mr. Crawford's email? I'm sorry, the email to Mr. Crawford, 10th November 2014, which is RBK 3033895. And I think we've looked at that before. I just want to show it to you. Again, I mean, this is what was sent to Neil Crawford. And again, we've seen that this doesn't mention any lack of detailed information on B4. We can take that as read because it only deals with B1 and I suppose B5 as well. Do you know why, at this stage, Neil Crawford was not told to provide detailed information which would help you decide whether the design was compliant with B4?
It would have come out in the decision notice.
Right, well, let's move on to the
Sorry,
decision notice.
I haven't got my email to Neil Crawford up. I've got the memorandum form 53. As I say, it says this scheme has been sent for consultation.
Yes. Well, in relation to the decision notice itself, that would be done on a Form 60, or from a Form 60, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So I think you've said. Can we just have a look at a blank Form 60, a pro forma, which is RBK 3052487. I think this is no more than what it says there. It's a full plans decision tick sheet.
Yes.
You see that? There doesn't appear to be any room on there for identifying what the conditions are.
It would be a schedule attached.
Oh, I see. Right. We can't locate, or rather RBKC, I think, are themselves unable to locate the actual Form 60 for Grenfell Tower. Do you remember whether you did attach a schedule of conditions to the Form 60 that you filled out?
As far as I can.
Did any of those conditions relate to the facade, do you think?
Yes.
Do you remember what they were?
I can't now, as I
Right.
say.
Did you record those conditions anywhere other than on the Form 60 itself?
The schedule.
Right.
The schedule.
Now, we've seen no record at all of any conditions in any documents, either in correspondence or in any documents or in any emails. We certainly haven't seen any emails from you to Neil Crawford showing the conditions were attached, which related to the facade. Are you quite sure that you did impose conditions?
Yeah, I'm as certain as I can be.
Right. And with that certainty, can you help us with what the conditions were? Doing the best you can with your recollection.
I can't be,
Right.
sorry. I'll be only guessing.
Was it not important to record the conditions elsewhere other than on the P60 so as to make sure that you could check that they were complied with as the project progressed?
It would have been important, yes.
Yeah, but did you do that?
I don't know.
Right. Once you'd filled out the P60 form, what did you do with it? Do you remember?
Go into a basket.
A basket.
Yes, or a tray
Right.
for the business support group to process.
I see. Did you check if it had been issued after you put it in this basket?
I can't recall.
Right. Would you normally follow up to check whether a conditional P60 pass of a full plans application had been issued formally?
Not all the time.
Right. Given that you were responsible for this project, do you accept that you should have checked whether the decision notice had actually been issued?
Pardon me, yes.
Yes.
Would a decision notice normally be signed or stamped to authenticate it?
No, I think it just had a normal. I believe it had a facsimile of a signature, as far as I can recall.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn to a totally different topic. It's a topic which emerges from the last one, I think. I certainly won't finish it tonight, but I can certainly make some headway with it in the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, if we may.
Well, let's see how far we can
May
get.
we? Thank you.
Yes.
That'd be very good. I wanted to examine with you, Mr. Hoban, the facade, and in particular the cladding, by which I mean the external rain screen panels, and the insulation, the two major elements of the exterior wall system. We've already looked at the initial information provided with the full plans application. I start now then with the NBS specification. You told us this morning, almost in passing, that you had never seen a copy of the NBS specification for this project. Is that correct?
I don't believe it was sent to me. I may have seen some of it on site when I was visiting, but I can't be absolutely certain.
Right. So you may have done. Right.
Yeah.
Now, the drawings, do you remember, the drawings refer to sections of the NBS specification?
What drawings are these, please?
The drawings that you were sent on the 24th of
Oh,
September.
does it actually say that on the drawings? Or?
Well, we can. Let's see how we go with this. Do you remember? Let me try it this way. Do you remember seeing drawings which referred to, for example, H92 in a little ring?
Yeah.
You do. All right. Now let's then start with the rain screen cladding panels. We know from other documents that formal planning permission was granted eventually, I think, on the 30th of September 2014, to change the panels from zinc to aluminium composite material, or ACM. And we know that from the records. At the time, did anybody within Rbkc alert you to that development?
Not to my knowledge.
Right. Now, in your second statement at paragraph 25, and for the transcript, this is RBK 3050416 at page 7, you said that you had access to the planning section of Accolade, but that you can't recall if that access was restricted. Did you ever check Accolade to see what materials had been approved for use on the facade?
No.
You didn't. Why is that?
I generally wouldn't.
Right.
I would only go to planning drawings if was aware of a contravention and get planning enforcement involved.
Did anyone from the project, when I say from the project, I mean the professionals involved on it, such as Studio E or Ryden, tell you that the rain screen panels, the materials or product, had changed from zinc to aluminium composite?
That I can't recall, but obviously I found that out at some stage. I don't know whether I was... I know I met Ben Bailey, because he's the young person that I described in my note. Whether he told me it was ACM or somebody else, I can't recall.
Right. Well, Ben Bailey, as we know, came into the project as Harley's project manager from early February 2015.
Right.
The change to aluminium composite panels, ACM, was essentially approved at the end of July 2014 and formally approved by planning at the end of September 2014, so 5 months before that. My question is, did anyone from Studio E or Ryden tell you in 2014, either in July or in September or early October maybe, that the rain screen had changed from zinc to ACM?
I can't recall.
Would you expect a contractor or a designer to update you about changes to the materials to be used in the facade?
Yes, I would.
Yes. If they hadn't done so, would you keep tabs on the project to make sure that you at least could satisfy yourself that no changes had been made? Or would you just rely on them to tell you? And if they didn't tell you, you'd assume that it was as per the application?
I could clearly see when the works was being done that it wasn't zinc, it was ACM.
Yes, indeed. And we'll come to that. But I'm just interested to know whether anybody actually just told you at the time that the material changed.
Don't recall,
Right.
but obviously the original drawings had zinc on there, and I could tell that it wasn't zinc.
Right. You could tell that it wasn't zinc, yes. Did you ever see any drawings that said ACM?
That I can't recall.
Right. In your second statement, page 13, can we just go to that? I want to show you paragraph 38A and ask you a question about it. You say there, top of the page, you say, from reports shown on television and given in the press, evidence given to the PI, that's the public inquiry, I think, by expert witnesses on the subject, my belief is that Celotex insulation, boarding, and filler material used on the project was not of limited combustibility, as per Appendix A, paragraph 9 of approved document B. What do you mean there by the term filler material?
Making good filler material.
Right. So you don't mean, just to be very clear about this, you don't mean, do you, the core of the ACM panel?
No, I don't.
Right. And was it your view at the time of your work on the Grenfell Tower project that filler material was making good material as opposed to the core of a panel?
Correct.
Right. Now you go on in that paragraph to say the external surfaces of the ACM cladding used, stroke fixed, did not meet with the provisions set out in 12.5 to 12.6, B4, approved document B. When you say the ACM external surface of the ACM cladding did not meet with those provisions, what do you mean by that?
That it wasn't Class O. It was my understanding, and from the information I had at the time, that the ACM was Class O. In the news, they said it wasn't Class O. So I'm reporting on what was said in the press and on television.
I follow. Now, in your first statement, if we can just go back to that, RBK 3033934, page 6, please. I'd like us to look together at paragraph 57. And you say there in answer to the question, was the exterior of the building, including the cladding, insulation, fixing and windows, compliant with the relevant building regulations, fire regulations, other legislation, British standards, including testing requirements, guidance and industry practice? You say, based on the information I had at the time, it was my understanding that it was compliant. However, the cladding has now been shown not to be compliant as a result of the cladding that was specified would be used was not in fact used. Is it your evidence that you were never told that the panels had been changed from zinc to ACM?
As I say, I go back to what I said before. I'm not certain of that, but I actually, I could see that they weren't zinc. As I say, I saw that on site. Right. Whether I was ever told, or I don't recall receiving an email saying that it had been changed.
Right.
But I became aware through my inspections. Whether I was, as I say, was told at the time, I can't recall.
Did it not surprise you when you did first see Rainer Bond ACM panels on the building that you hadn't been told at any earlier stage that those panels were going to be on the building, whether by Studio E or by Ryden, and whether in a document or plan or drawing?
At the time, it didn't surprise me because things change.
Things change, though, in accordance with the process. And my question is, you hadn't seen anything in the documents to alert you to this change. When you did see it on the building, eventually, in 2015, did it not surprise you that the external surface had changed from zinc, as per the drawings, to aluminium, as per what was on the building?
No, as I say, it's not something that comes to mind.
Right.
So, as I say, things. I'll give you an example, if I may, with regards the sports centre. They were going to use a particular type of staircase, and then all of a sudden they got a different staircase in.
Right. Well, let me put it this way. Given that you'd seen that ACM was on the building, having been told in the drawings, and we saw the south elevation, in the September of 2014 that it was going to be zinc, did it not make you wonder what else Studio E or Ryden hadn't told you about the external facade and its makeup?
At the time, it didn't register. So.
Right. Should it have done?
In hindsight, yes. What I would say, I'd worked with a lot of the professionals on this project, on the other schemes, and I had a confidence in them. The architects and the various other professionals, and ex-over. So
yes.
I dealt with them, and I considered that they knew what they were doing.
Right. Do we take from that answer that because of your experiences with Studio E and ex-over on the CALC project, you had perhaps a closer working relationship than otherwise you might have done?
Yes.
And did that lead you to trust them?
Yes.
Did you know that Studio E had never done an external overclad of a high-rise building?
No, I didn't. And in evidence that had come out since, it was always my understanding that ex-over were fully involved in the project. There's a number of emails that show Mr. Ashton copied in. Nobody ever came back to me and said, well, we're not using ex-over. It was always my understanding that there was a team there dealing with the project.
Did you take comfort from the fact that Mr. Ashton was involved in some way?
Yes.
And on Studio E, were you a little bit softer on them than you otherwise might have been because of your relationship?
No. But as I say, I worked with them for quite a considerable time on the academy. and I considered that architects it would reasonable to expect that they would know and understand building regulations.
Was it not your job to hold them to the highest standards of compliance with the building regulations, completely independently and ruthlessly?
In hindsight, yes, but I'd worked with them on the other project, and as I say, working with them there, I spent a lot more time because of the dealing with it, because I was only dealing with one area. In this particular instance, I'd worked with them over a period of time, and it was my understanding that they knew what they were doing.
Now, just before we finish for the day, Mr. Hoban, you mentioned a number of times in your evidence that you saw the BBA certificate for these panels. In other words, the Arconic manufactured Reynolds PE 55 ACM panels. We're going to come to it in due course, I think, tomorrow. Now, do you remember the circumstances in which you saw that document?
I would have looked it up at some stage.
Were you ever given it by anybody on the project?
I don't recall.
Do you know what prompted you to look it up on the project?
To check that, to see if it was Class O.
Do you know at what stage you did that? Do you remember?
No, I can't.
Presumably it was after having seen it on the building.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, as I say, we are mid-topic, but I think given it's been a long day.
It sounds as though it might be a good point.
I think it's as good a point. Given that it's 4:30, I think it probably is.
Yes. Well, Mr. Hoban, we're going to break there for the day. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to come back tomorrow for some more questions, but I think you were probably expecting that.
Yes, I was.
After you leave the room, please remember not to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it over the break.
Yes.
And we'll resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, please.
Right.
All right? Thank you very much. We'd like to go with the usher, please. Thank you. 10 o'clock tomorrow.